Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the regular board meeting of January 26, 2016 to order. I would like Mr. Connor Leichman, who is Vice President of Associated Students at Chandler Gilbert Community College, to approach the podium. Mr. Leichman will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leichman. Announce substitutes. This is the first time I've done this, so don't get too excited. Substituting for Vice Chancellor Maria Harper Marinick is the Assistant Vice Chancellor Felicia Ganter, and substituting for President Sherry Olson of South Mountain is Vice President Janet Ortega. College reports. First, the student life report from Chandler Gilbert Community College Student Life. You have fans.
It's pretty scary. Good evening, President Gutierrez, members of the board, Dr. Glasper, members of the Chancellor's Executive Council, and guests. My name is Michael Green. I'm the Director of Student Life and Leadership at Chandler Gilbert Community College. Tonight's Student Life Report is in two parts. Part one is myself and Herschel Jackson, who is the Student Life Director at Australia Mountain Community College, will be presenting on the district-wide 3-day leadership retreat held in Prescott, Arizona on September 18th, 19th, and 20th, 2015. Part two will be Connor Leichman. You just met Connor. He is the newly named Vice President of the Associate Students of Chandler Gilbert Community College, and he will be presenting on the student government happenings at Chandler Gilbert Community College. So, part one, the Pine Summit Camp. The theme for this year's camp was the Leadership Challenge. I'm sorry, let me back up. All right. This year's theme for the 3-day leadership retreat was taken from the book, The Leadership Challenge, written by James Coos and Barry Posner. The theme was Inspire a Shared Vision. Research shows that our connections with students will help them succeed and continue with our colleges. The retreat creates a district-wide learning community that helps students belong and realize that they can be successful. 3 days are spent in the cool pine trees of Prescott, Arizona, with 155 students, 28 staff from all over Maricopa colleges, along with students from Central Arizona College and Coconino Community College who attended the retreat. The 3-day leadership retreat is collaborated to help connect students to the offices of student life and leadership on our campuses and to facilitate student involvement. Research shows that this connection increases student retention, persistence, and completion. Committee members included Herschel Jackson, KT Campbell, Herschel Jackson from Australia Mountain, KT Campbell from Chandler Gilbert Community College, who are here today, along with the other directors of student life and leadership and staff from all over the district. A few highlights. The keynote speaker was the dynamic Randy Moore of the Year Up program. His inspirational message to us all took us all through his journey through education, which included overcoming some frustrating circumstances to obtaining his master's degree and focusing on acquiring his doctoral degree. We were all amazed and motivated by his story. Workshops. You see the workshops up there? Finish Your Vision was presented by the Central Arizona College student and staff. Your Life, Your Success was presented by Australia Mountain Community College, Herschel Jackson. From What to Why was Glendale Community College students and staff. And the Take the Lead was John Bastian from Rio College. Another highlight was the rotating leadership panel, and the objective was for students to learn 3 different approaches to current colleges and community leaders who have used Inspire to inspire a shared vision. Here's a list of all those who voluntarily came up to share their journey with the students. And you see again, Stephanie Fuji, Joni Grosvenor, Chris Haynes, Eric Lashinsky, Adriana Coronel, Pamela Hall, Mona Scott, Herschel Jackson, Alex Canal, Juan Mendez, and Julia Guse. All of those individuals were there on their own to provide their journey through leadership and help inspire the students. Okay, I will let Herschel Jackson go over the learning outcomes and the student comments from the 3-day retreat.
Okay, up here we have some of our measured outcomes for the 3-day retreat. When asked about attending the MCCD 3-day leadership retreat, 72% of the students strongly agreed that they want to become more involved in campus activities once they return. 21% agreed. While attending MCCD 3-day leadership retreat, I participated in a group activity to create a shared vision. 77% strongly agreed, 19% agreed. As a result of attending the MCCD 3-day leadership retreat, I now have a vision and understand how to utilize it. 63% strongly agreed, 21% agreed. Here we have some student comments. It's a small sample of some of the comments, but it illustrates the actual impact that this retreat can have on our students. So one of the students stated, "Please don't stop this retreat." Another student stated, "Love the diversity and being able to interact and listen to opinions of people from various different backgrounds." Another student stated, "The 3-day leadership has changed many of my views and I loved all the skills to succeed. My inner world has changed after attending MCCD 3-day leadership retreat. Attending this retreat, I became able to identify all my strengths and skills, and moreover, I learned how to utilize all of my strengths. I also learned how to overcome the barriers to leaderships within a 3-day short period. Now I am a changed person with a bright vision and the best ways to achieve my goals." Also, I would like to state that the students who attended the 3-day leadership retreat, after attending the retreat, they were able to clearly identify the various internal and external factors to play a role in our students' success, but oftentimes play a role in our students' failures as well. The students also were able to identify different methods to effectively navigate these internal and external factors on their way to success as a student as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to really actually move the question section till after Connor's presentation, and I will welcome Connor Leichman on behalf of the student government at Chandler Gilbert Community College. And I'll help you pull this up.
President Gutierrez, members of the board, Dr. Glasper, members of the CEC, and guests. My name is Connor Leichtman, Vice President of Associated Students here at Chandler Gilbert, where I'm enrolled in the pre-law program. One day soon, I'd like to practice law here in Arizona. Before I begin, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to speak, and here we go. Today, I'd like to talk about some events we've held on campus and our approach to being involved within the community. Our goal last semester was to follow the 3 S's of success: social, service, and studies. In a second, I will show you examples of each of these philosophies. For social, this October, we hosted a family movie night. With an attendance of around 300 people, we showed Hocus Pocus and set up booths and held a costume contest. Here are some examples of the booths. If you can't read that, I'll list off some of them right now. Men held a Boo Bowling booth, and our most popular booth was the Educators Rising face painting. It was pretty fun, actually. Overall, it was a great success, and we intend on doing something like this in the near future. Our next S stands for service. For the holiday season, the community here at Chandler Gilbert organized several fundraisers for the students. Our Adopt a Family Drive was able to adopt 5 families for the holiday season to provide them with some necessary gifts. We also held a gift of giving tree where students could pick an ornament that listed an item a child in need requested. This could range from clothing to school supplies to One Direction perfume. And the last S stands for studies. For the week before finals, we held a Student Appreciation Week. One day we gave out hot chocolate and donuts, while another day we hosted a Fueling Up for Finals booth. That day we gave out school supplies as well as snacks and drinks for the students to fuel up for finals. We had a great success in that. We gave out items to hundreds of students, and a lot of students really appreciated the thought. We're excited for this next semester, and here are the clubs that meet every Thursday at the club board meetings that I run. This next week, we are hosting a club fair where we would love to recruit some more members to not only these clubs here, but to our Pavilion PAC, which is the student government here at Chandler Gilbert. Thank you for your time, and do you guys have any questions?
Questions, members of the board? Ms. McGrath?
Thank you, President Gutierrez. I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Green, please.
Yes.
Mr. Green, do the students raise their own funds for this retreat, or is Maricopa Community College District paying for it?
It comes out of the budgets of the student life directors at the colleges. The students do not have to pay.
Yeah, and how much does this 3-day retreat cost us?
You know, I don't have the numbers in my head right now. I can provide those for you, but it comes out to about $150 per student.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Livingston?
This is for either of you. Connor, I'd like to say that, first of all, welcome to the world of public speaking, and I think you'll make a fine attorney one day.
Thank you.
Other than that, I'm very impressed with how much you did on Chandler Gilbert's campus, especially for that finals week and giving to others. The One Direction cologne, why does that stick in your head? As I
was
sit
probably
here,
the-
I pick up the randomest things, but
That was probably the most surprising thing that we've
yeah,
found.
absolutely, absolutely. The Pine Summit, excuse me. Fabulous idea. I think leaders emerge from true leadership, not often taught in the books, but taught outside. Congratulations, sir. Excellent presentation.
We do believe in learning outside the classroom is just as important as learning inside the classroom. Thank you.
Further comments? Mr. Green, Vice President Green, thank you very, very much. Extraordinary program.
Thank you.
Connor, thank you. College reports, Scottsdale Community College. I think we're in for a surprise.
Thank you, President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor Glasper, CEC colleagues, and guests. It's my honor to introduce a very special group tonight. You know, we don't have to look very far or very long to understand that college and university campuses are increasingly the site of some crises or violent acts, sometimes with very unfortunate consequences. The group tonight comes to you as presenting themselves and what they do as a resource to Maricopa. And so one sort of personal comment, Beth Ells, who's with this group, is a retired Scottsdale Community College faculty member. And I can say in my tenure at Scottsdale, Beth affirms the importance of helping people in need through the help and dedication and training of our four-legged friends. So it's with pleasure to introduce the folks from HOPE, an animal-assisted crisis response program. I think they're here. There they are. Let me just say parenthetically, at this time of major change in our lives, I think we all can probably have a little moment of therapy by petting the dogs on the way out. Maybe not. I'm sorry.
Yes. I have some brochures if anyone wants them of our organization. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Chancellor, members of CEC, and guests. My name is Pat Severance, and I'm the Arizona State Coordinator for HOPE Animal Assisted Crisis Response. And my canine partner is Pilar, and Beth is my colleague and a HOPE member. And as you said, she worked at Scottsdale Community College Division Chair, and her canine partner is Cinder. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight regarding our organization to let you know what we have to offer different organizations. We're hoping to let you know about our organization so you know that our services are available for any crisis or disaster that may occur on a campus. HOPE's mission statement is to provide comfort and encouragement through animal-assisted support to individuals affected by crisis or disasters. A little bit about our history. It's a national, all-volunteer, nonprofit 501c3 organization with highly experienced canine therapy teams who have been specially trained in crisis response. HOPE was established 15 years ago and now encompasses 5 regions and covers 29 states with 250 crisis response teams. We are in the Southwest region, which includes California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada, and we currently have 15 teams in Arizona. The teams are certified and insured with $1 million liability insurance policy. One important thing about our organization is that we do not self-deploy. We must be invited to serve at someone's request. It could be anybody at the school, it could be somebody from the church, it could be anybody in the community, but we need to be invited because it would be chaos if we would just show up with these dogs, because we go along with the fire department, the police department, with all of their structure, and we follow along all of those lines as well. All of our teams, the dog and the canine, we must be active in community service work with our dogs to keep them ready and able to work at any time. The dogs and the handlers are screened for stability and personality and temperament before even qualifying to go to the 3-day intensive training over in California. And we must do continuing education to keep up to date on everything as well. Our dogs and handlers are specially trained to deal with unpredictable situations and high degrees of stress that are found in a crisis or disaster situation. HOPE's involvement with various outside agencies is necessary to build relationships prior to deployment so people know what we're about and what services we have to offer, because as you would know, it wouldn't be the time when a crisis occurs to then contact these people, and that's why we like to go out, such as tonight, to let people know on the front end what we have and what we can do to help in a crisis prior to something occurring. Some of the incidents where we have served in the past, it started with the World Trade Center, 9/11, Santa Monica College shooting, Kelly Elementary School shooting in Carlsbad, the Tucson mass shooting, Katrina, Navy Yard shootings in Washington, D.C., the NAU shooting, Yarnell Fire, the Valley Fire just recently over in Lake County, California is where I served for my first official call out. And we also have served call outs for suicides and school incidents, death notifications, and line of duty deaths. And some of the partnerships that we are involved with are the Red Cross, Salvation Army, Arizona Department of Emergency Management, and we are also really honored to be a part of the Arizona VOAD and the National VOAD, which is the volunteer organizations active in disaster. So I think most everybody knows here, and research bears it out, that interacting with a calm, well-mannered dog will lower blood pressure, reduce heart rate, and help combat stress. And that's exactly what we do in these situations. So some of the ways that we can help, we can provide the bridge between the survivors and the professional care providers. We can assist with compassion, fatigue, and stress management for staff and first responders. And we can be a calming influence on survivors who are waiting for services at disaster relief centers or shelters. And HOPE responds to any crisis or disaster, whether it is one person that is in need or a massive event. So we look forward to working with you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions, discussion? Ms. Livingston.
Thank you very much for your service, and thank you very much for training the dogs so they can be in service. It's a lovely program.
Thank you.
It really is extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is a bet.
When you got it, you got it.
Next is the Faculty Executive Council report, Ms. Selena Bednard.
That's a tough act to follow for sure. Again, my name is Selena Bednarik, and I'm the president of the Faculty Association. President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor Glasper, members of CEC and guests, it's good to be back for the spring semester. On behalf of the Faculty Association, I'd like to begin by congratulating Mr. Gutierrez and Mrs. Haver on their respective elections as board president and secretary for this year. These past few weeks have been busy as faculty, staff, and students of Maricopa have found their way back to campus, and the excitement of the first week of classes is behind us. As the beginning of each new semester is something we, as faculty, always look forward to, undeniably this semester will be quite different for many of us. The impending departure of Dr. Glasper and the resulting process to select the next leader for Maricopa Community Colleges is important to all Maricopa employees. Chancellor Glasper has led our institution for 12 years, and for many of us has been the only chancellor we've known. Maricopa is an exceptional community college district, and each of us shares a commitment to student learning and student success. The strength of our district and the benefits higher education has brought to our community is not a lucky accident. It is the direct result of quality leadership and a solid understanding of academia, higher education, and the role of faculty in shared governance. The residential faculty are the foundation of Maricopa's ability to deliver superior education and training for our students and their families, and for our local communities and businesses. Providing us with much-needed support will continue to be essential in our success. In an effort to provide input on the essential qualifications for the next chancellor, the Faculty Association surveyed all residential faculty. Nearly 500 faculty participated in the survey during a 3-week period. The survey was designed to ascertain the qualifications faculty believed to be most important in the next Maricopa Community College's chancellor. I'd like to share with you the top 4 qualifications. The first one is demonstrates knowledge of and commitment to the role of faculty, values and is committed to supporting faculty as professionals who are essential in higher education. Number 2, committed to transparency and fairness in all aspects of the system, including allocation of resources and treatment of students and employees. Number 3, demonstrates knowledge of and commitment to shared governance. Number 4, exhibits strong communication and interpersonal and relationship building skills, especially among employees, students, trustees, legislators, public regulatory agencies, business leaders, public schools, and taxpayers. These qualifications, when operationalized and practiced, directly impact students and demonstrate a commitment to student success. The faculty of Maricopa believe an individual with a strong academic background, a well-developed interpersonal communication style, and demonstrated experience in shared governance with all employees is exactly what Maricopa needs to flourish. In order to ensure the stability of our district and the continuation of the greatness it has achieved in the past, the faculty advocate for the swift selection of a permanent chancellor through a fair and open process. I urge you to consider your role as trustees of this district, trustees not only of the fiduciary and administrative operations of the district, but of the district's legacy to an exemplary community college system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bednarik. Questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Excuse me, Ms. Bednarik, there was a question or a comment. Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, President Gutierrez. Could you possibly get us a list, what you just read of your
Sure, I can
desired
provide you with a
qualifications?
transcript. We also had the results of the survey in full detail that were provided to you on the January 12th special session, I do believe, Ms. LaCoya, Johnson, sorry. I think we provided those to you, but we will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Adjunct Faculty Association report, Mr. Leo Valverde.
President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor Glasper, members of the CEC, guests, my name is Leo Valverde, and I am so thankful that I got to go after the person that went after the dogs. And I guess that means that my dogs are very misbehaved because my blood pressure is high, I have a terrible stress level, and I can never get any sleep. Let me be the last to say Happy New Year to everyone, and also I have two things to report on, and one comment, if you will. This weekend, the Adjunct Faculty Association will be electing its first sitting president-elect, who will serve for these final 6 months of my term, which ends in June. And I will be very pleased and happy to introduce you to the next president at the next meeting. In addition, what we are doing is resurrecting the all-members meeting in an effort to bring adjunct faculty together in a face-to-face setting where we can simply discuss issues. While emails and surveys are quick ways to get information, there is nothing like a town hall setting or a gathering of individuals where we can actually speak. And once we have that, I'm going to be happy to report out on some of the emerging issues for adjunct faculty. The only comment that I would like to make, and I do appreciate the board being open and transparent about its forming the committee for the selection of the next chancellor and the appointment of Dr. Crow from ASU, and congratulations to Professor Bednarik for also being selected to chair that. I would ask that the board consider an adjunct faculty representative on that committee. And the Adjunct Faculty Association would be more than happy to help you nominate or select or vet or provide input for that individual. Adjunct faculty teach the majority of the classes. We are the largest employee group, well, given the times, it doesn't appear that our numbers are going to be decreasing. So I would simply ask that the board consider that, and we are more than happy to help out. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Valverde.
Thank you.
Emeritus Awards and Recognition, Dr. Jan Geller.
Thank you. President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor Glasper, CEC colleagues, and guests here this evening. President Gutierrez, with your permission, I'd like to ask Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Daniel Kaur, to come to the podium to make this award.
Proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Gaylor. President Gutierrez, board members, and members of the CEC. It is indeed my great pleasure to recognize here a friend and colleague, and if I could ask Dr. Jim Visage to join me at the podium. Dr. Visage earned his doctorate in education from Arizona State University in 2002 and his master's and bachelor's degrees in mathematics education from Northern Illinois University. After 20 very successful years teaching and coaching high school in Illinois, he joined Scottsdale Community College in 1995. Dr. V, as virtually everyone calls him, and certainly all his students call him, was a very successful and well-respected professor. He primarily taught calculus and pre-calculus, where he set very high expectation for his students, demanded excellence, and rewarded students with humor and encouragement. We have witnessed the transformation of numerous students, turning his students into problem solvers and mathematical thinkers who learn to embrace the challenge of learning mathematics. His students regularly wrote thank you notes expressing appreciation, gratitude for the challenging learning environment that he cultivated in his classroom, and citing the benefits that they realized in future courses, in future education, and in their career. Beyond the classroom, Dr. V impacted the professional culture at Scottsdale through his leadership and expertise in research in mathematics education. Since 2004, he has been the leader in professional development projects throughout the region with K-12 instructors, totaling more than $10 million in funding to support the teaching and learning of mathematics in the state of Arizona. Most recently, Dr. V serves as the co-principal investigator of a $9 million Arizona Mathematics Partnership funded by the National Science Foundation, where he facilitates workshops for middle school teachers and conducts research with faculty and graduate students. The faculty across the district have the utmost respect for Dr. V. Here's just a few of the comments. From Trey Cox at Chandler Gilbert. Dr. Visich is the consummate professional. He is knowledgeable about current mathematics education and research and has found the knack for being able to repackage it in a way that is effective in reaching today's college students. Another colleague, Scott Edmondson, also from Chandler Gilbert. Dr. Visich inspires not only his students, but other faculty by challenging them to meet very high expectations. His passion for students, his teaching, and for mathematics itself is something that inspires all of us to imitate. Dr. V has been a mentor in every sense of the word for students, for his faculty colleagues, and even for one administrator. My friend and colleague, Dr. Jim Visich.
Dr. Visich.
President Gutierrez and board members, Dr. Gaylor, Dr. Kaur, I want to put a feather in your hat. My colleagues and I have been giving professional development to elementary, middle school, and high school teachers in the state of Arizona since 2003 through various grants from the U.S. Department of Education and the big one from the National Science Foundation. A conservative estimate would be, as a district, we have impacted 600 teachers, math teachers in Arizona, and about 500,000 of their students. So I want to thank you for your vision, and when you come up to decisions that are tough to make, I want you to think of me, my colleagues, and the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Visich. Are there any questions or comments? Questions or comments? Dr. Visich, I believe there are comments and questions.
I just want to thank you for all your work, especially helping in K through 12, because as a veteran teacher, I saw a need for instruction, helping these teachers better communicate mathematics. And so that's all I can say is thank you very much.
It's my privilege.
Dr. Visich, I also want to thank you. You're exactly the kind of person that makes this district what it is. That gives it extraordinary vision. It's an extraordinary gift to the people of this county and to all of our students, and that's because of you, and I want to thank you very much.
Well, I have to say, in 41 years of education, I hit the lottery working at SCC.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Bill Guerrero, Chandler Gilbert Community College.
President Gutierrez, may I approach the podium, please?
Of course.
And may I ask Sally and Gordon Jesse to approach?
Proceed.
President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor Glasper, CEC members, and guests. Over the years, the Maricopa Community Colleges have welcomed many faculty and staff to the distinction of emeritus status. It is not often, however, that we have the privilege of recognizing a husband and wife team on the same night for for their individual and collective accomplishments. I'm happy this evening to so honor Sally Jesse, dance faculty, and Gordon Jesse, theater faculty at Chandler Gilbert Community College. Before I mention Sally and Gordon's individual work at CGCC and their contributions to the advancement of the performing arts in the Maricopa Community College District, I would like to bring to your attention two major initiatives they worked on together. First, Sally and Gordon pioneered an interdisciplinary focus for the performing arts that is unique and exemplary in Maricopa. In the early days of CGCC, they forged strong ties among the dance, theater, instrumental music, and vocal music programs that continue to unite faculty and students to this day. Second is the establishment of the Sally and Gordon Jesse Performing Arts Scholarship at CGCC, which will assure the Jesse's legacy as lifelong teachers and supporters of the performing arts and as advocates and advisors of students who wish to begin their dance, theater, or music education at CGCC. And now it is my privilege to read for you the individual accomplishments of these remarkable faculty and seek your approval of their emeritus distinction. Sally, you're first. In 1986, Sally Jesse began her career in Maricopa by writing a successful Vibrant Arts grant for the Community Dance Festival at Phoenix College. The following year, she came to CGCC as an adjunct dance instructor and was hired as the college's first residential dance faculty in 1988. Highlights of Sally's many accomplishments during her 27-year career at Chandler Gilbert include directing and choreographing over 40 musical theater productions, directing more than 50 dance concerts, choreographing numerous new works for CGCC dancers, establishing the original CGCC Dance Company, and touring dancers to the American College Dance Festival for over 2 decades. She co-directed CGCC's Santan Arts Festival for 13 years, an event for which she and her husband Gordon received a CGCC Innovation of the Year award. Establishing CGCC's East Valley High School Dance Festival, which she has run for 9 years and counting. Writing grants exceeding $112,000 to fund guest artists and performing arts student enrichment activities, and collaborating in the revision of the Maricopa dance curriculum back in 1991, moving dance from a physical education activity to a performing art. Serving as co-chair of CGCC's Communication and Fine Arts Division and president and secretary of the CGCC Faculty Association. Serving on statewide committees including the Arizona Dance Standards, Dance Arts Alliance, Dance Educators Association, and the Dance Coalition. So it is my pleasure now to present the first award to Sally.
President Gutierrez, Board, Chancellor Glasper, CEC, and guests, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a wonderful journey through Chandler Gilbert and the Maricopa Community System. Thank you.
I wonder when you had time for a life, given that.
This was my life.
Questions, comments? Proceed, Dr. Garrow.
We used to say our children grew up in the back row of the theater.
It sounds like they did.
Gordon Jesse's career with Maricopa Community Colleges really began in 1967 when he enrolled in Phoenix College to study with the legendary John Paul. Gordon earned an Associate of Arts in Theater and taught as an adjunct at Scottsdale Community College in 1973 and again in 1982. He was hired as full-time faculty at Phoenix College in 1983, and after 3 years at Phoenix, he transferred to the newly established Chandler Gilbert Education Center as its 7th residential faculty. Gordon founded the Performing Arts Department at CGCC and was instrumental in developing 4 performance spaces at the Pagos campus, the largest of which is the Arnett Scott Ward Performing Arts Center. Gordon's charity work includes chair of the MCCD Fine Arts Development Committee, chair of the Chandler Gilbert Community College Communications and Fine Arts Division, the Division Chair Council, and the Faculty Association. He was named Outstanding Faculty Employee at CGCC, and as you now know, he and his wife Sally were awarded CGCC's Innovation of the Year for their work on the Santan Arts Festival, which ran for 13 years. In retrospect, while lobbying for Chandler Gilbert Community College and for the arts across the district, Gordon says he may have annoyed so many board members, so many chancellors, vice chancellors, and presidents that he feels lucky to have kept his job for 31 years. Gordon.
Dr. Gutierrez, board members, Chancellor Glasper, members of CEC and guests. I rarely would speak for my wife because that gets me in trouble whenever I do. But I think I can say that we both feel very, very fortunate to have worked in Maricopa, to have built part of Chandler Gilbert Community College, and to have done this together. It's been an amazing experience. I would say that when I had been there 2 years, I guess, at Chandler Gilbert, and Sally got hired as the dance instructor, and Arnett was a little concerned about having a husband and wife teaching together. And she said, well, I just prayed to Jesus, let it work out. Arnett, I think it worked out. I'll close with something that I've said many times. Starting a community college is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and that's about all anyone can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Mr. Saar.
In general, the arts are an important part of Maricopa Community Colleges.
Mr. and Mrs. Jesse?
No, you can stay there. That's fine. You can listen. Because both of you are, as well as many others, have been instrumental in bringing the arts to the community colleges. It's a secret in Maricopa County, the talent that we have in our two-year institutions. And every year in the spring, we get an opportunity to allow the state and the local area to see some of the talent that we have with the chancellor's function in April, I believe it is. And that I've gone to it every year, and it just totally amazes me that community colleges can compete at the level that I see those students doing so. So congratulations to you, and thank you so much for bringing that to us.
Thank you very, very much.
And have fun in retirement as well.
Extraordinary achievement. Thank you. The next item is Dr. Champagne.
President
Lisa,
Gutierrez, with your permission, I'd like to approach the podium.
Indeed.
President Gutierrez, members of the Governing Board, Chancellor Glasper, CEC colleagues and guests, adding to tonight's list of outstanding faculty is a retiree from Mesa Community College. How do I describe him? Dr. Scott Russell, please join me. Dr. Russell is indeed a scholar, anthropologist, a researcher, an innovator, a man with a big heart, dedicated to students. He joined Mesa Community College in early 2000. 13 years later, prior to that, he has a successful career doing various different things for the state of Arizona. But when he joined Mesa Community College, he couldn't limit himself into the classroom, gets into all kinds of troubles. Now listen to this. In 2008, he was the person come to my office said, we need to apply for federal grant because we have too many students who struggle, who are not prepared. We need to use federal fund to help these students. Through his work, he chaired a committee. We won a Title III grant for 5 years, $400,000 every year. And through his work, we see the progress. Just recently, our developmental student success course completion rate changed from 62% to 67%. You didn't know that, just very recent. And we won another Title III grant for another $3 million. He became the advisor for 9 years for our Omicron Beta chapter of Phi Delta Kappa. He served on the honors program director for another 6 years. He served the chair of the Arizona Honors Council. He chaired the International Education Committee at MCC. He has also served as co-chair of MCC Student Success Committee. I used the word innovator. He also drafted the African American Indian, African American Chicano Studies program. These programs are taught, shared with other Maricopa community colleges. So in 2010-11, he was recognized by Phi Delta Kappa for Arizona Region's Distinguished Advisor. 2011, he received another Distinguished Advisor Award. 2012, he was recognized to receive the John Suzanne Rush Excellent Award by the League of Innovations in the Community Colleges. The list could go on. Needless to say, we truly blessed with his leadership, his scholarship, his dedication to students. On many occasions, I remember, he wrote his personal checks to offer student scholarship for student athletes, another passion of him. So thank you, Dr. Russell, for your dedication, for your good work. Please.
Dr. Russell.
President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor, college presidents. Thank you very much for this honor. Thank you for Maricopa for hiring a 53-year-old. Okay. I think knowledge comes with age. Right? Okay.
I suspect this board would agree with you.
I would hope so. Okay. And in teaching, I think that is very true. So it's something you do. I have always been very energetic by the list of things that Chairman President Pan shared with you. I think that is very important. Teaching community college is not only about teaching, it's about being a mentor, moving people forward continuously in the classroom and out of the classroom. I looked for places with vacuums, with holes at our institution that I could help. And that was my philosophy for the years that I was there. So I very much appreciate this, and I hope that I have contributed and deserve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. Questions? Ms. Livingston.
Just real quick, you're really the epitome of what we saw this evening, which was not only leadership, dedication, hard work, and the philosophy of sharing all of your talents and sometimes your financial abilities with others. Thank you very much, all of you, for your passion this evening and for your dedication. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. Citizens interim. The board offers an opportunity for members of the public to address the governing board in compliance with the open meeting law. The board will neither discuss nor take action on issues raised during this portion of the agenda. When and if necessary, the issues can be taken under advisement and placed on a subsequent agenda. So in terms of those of you speaking for the first time, we will not be responding, but we will be listening. We will call out the names in the order in which I receive them. And the first one is Donna Owens. Ms. Owens.
I'd like to donate my time to Donna Winston.
Okay. Judith Clark.
Good evening, President Gutierrez, members of the governing board, Chancellor Glasper, members of CEC, guests, and fellow community members. I'm Judith Clark. First, I'd like to comment on the proposed resolution to have conducted an investigation by an external law firm for a confidential report to be prepared related to the signing of a $400,000 contract prior to receiving governing board approval. While I'm glad an impartial review will take place, I'm curious why its results will be revealed in an executive session. If, as President Gutierrez indicated during a meeting earlier this month, the investigation is to dispel the perception of a misdeed occurring, why shroud the outcome in secrecy? We know the action item hasn't been brought before the governing board until now. Let us in on why the firm's rep began work in January 2015 by his own admission in a recorded presentation. That's fully 5 months before a requisition or a purchase order was approved. As we know, an audit, which generally is the tool used to look into money issues, can be shared publicly. We saw this most recently with the audit conducted on accounts for professional staff. That audit was sent to a wide audience within the district. Also, while you seek clarification for how a $400,000 contract came to be approved by district administration prior to governing board approval, you may also want to question whether other accounting irregularities exist. Perhaps blanket purchase orders for hundreds of thousands of dollars of professional services which never are presented to the governing board for information or approval. Second, thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding demonstrated employee appreciation. The Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board has sent a message loud and clear to its community, to its constituents, and to its employees. It's a resounding, definite message. It's a message which serves to emphatically remind employees daily that their contribution to student success are of no value as perceived by the governing board and district administration. This message was delivered at the December 9th, 2014 governing board meeting, where a motion was passed 4-1 to delegate the governing board's statutory powers and duties to a non-elected entity. This action has been indicated by the Arizona Attorney General's office to be a violation of state law. This message has been delivered repeatedly by district administration, specifically Human Resources and the Chancellor, from October 2014, when a pattern of interfering in and dominating employee representation began with the assertion that Professional Staff Association members no longer held the voting power to request resignation of its leadership. This message was delivered again in November 2014, when the lines of communication among professional staff were diminished through a district email. And again, in May 2015, this message was delivered when governing board approved policy was ignored and a declaration was sent advising that professional staff no longer could use district resources to communicate, to meet, or to conduct its business. This message was delivered July 2015 during a recorded presentation at Phoenix College when a conspiracy was revealed where district administration
Ms. Clark, you have
requested
30 more
elected and
seconds. You have 30 more seconds.
I'm sorry?
You have 30 more seconds.
Okay. Where elected and appointed employee group leaders, when a conspiracy was revealed where district administration requested elected and appointed employee group leaders to betray their responsibilities and to turn their backs on their constituents and withhold from their constituents, the employees of this district, the intent to consolidate employee groups by ignoring current Maricopa policy and the framework provided by the Constitution and bylaws of the employee groups. In closing, I implore each of you to demonstrate appreciation for your district employees through your actions and your votes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Chris Hunt.
I'd like to donate my time to Ms. Winston, please.
Ms. Winston, just let me make clear that the donation of time is accepted, but we will not hear you for 20 minutes.
No, I understand.
Okay. Sally Harvey.
Excuse me, so that's Hervey?
Hervey, excuse me, ma'am.
And I'd like to please request to surrender my time to ASCOPS.
As cops.
Jim Parks. Jim Parks?
I don't have a Jim Parks. I finally found a Jim Parks. Mr. Parks.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, President Gutierrez, members of the board, Dr. Glasper, members of CEC. My name is Jim Parks, the Executive Director of the Arizona Conference of Police and Sheriffs. We represent over 2,000 public safety employees and public employees across the state. We are the lobbyist and legal plan for over 100 affiliates statewide. We are here tonight to address misinformation that has been disseminated by the administration via an audit that was sent to college presidents, HR departments, as it relates to unions, ASCOPs, and the Maricopa Employees Group. The administration has been nothing but disingenuous when addressing the legalities of unions in the state of Arizona, the status of ASCOPs, and the relationship with the Maricopa Employees Association and Donna Winston. The first thing I'd like to do is kind of educate everybody on the notion that unions are illegal in Arizona. In fact, not only are unions legal in Arizona, they're also recognized. As an example, we have state statute that protects people that want to join unions. And that is public employees are protected under Arizona Revised Statute 23-1342. A person who coerces or compels any person to enter into an agreement, either written or oral, not to join or become a member of a labor organization as a condition of the other person obtaining employment or continuing in the employment of such person is a Class 2 misdemeanor. Not only are the Maricopa employees covered under the state statute, they are also covered under their federal statute of their First Amendment rights, freedom of association. And I think that about covers the legalities of unions. It has also been brought to our attention that employees are being advised that ASCOPS is a for-profit and that Donna Winston and the Maricopa Employees Group gains financially as a result of their relationship to and with ASCOPS. The individual making these comments is factually incorrect. ASCOPS is a not-for-profit 501c organization. Neither Donna Winston, Maricopa employees, or for that matter, any ASCOPS affiliate are financially compensated for their participation or partnership with Arizona Cops. ASCOPS is not a vendor in the Maricopa College system, nor were we a vendor at the 2014 PSA Summer Conference as it has been portrayed. ASCOPS was invited to address PSA members and the past PSA Executive Board with a legal plan, option, and replacement for the Arizona Coalition, a service that is desperately needed. And I want to thank the PSA for allowing us to present them with this very valuable information. Arizona Cops is not here to be adversarial or create issues. In fact, over the last 19 years, we have worked with many employers to help build relationships between employees and the administration. All we ask is that our members be treated fairly and with respect. I would like to quote Dr. Glasper. On September 10th, 2014, at the Big All Mat meeting, he stated, "So much of this conversation in the last year has been about the ability to reach people in our organization, to say that there were problems. And I empower every one of you and everyone in our district that if there is a problem, you find a way, or if you find a wall, you figure out a way to go around it, go under it, go over it, or something, but get to someone." Sir, when employees do just as you suggested, they are ignored, labeled malcontents, met with retaliation, and shunned. If we are not willing to stand behind our principles, employees will shut down and they will seek legal recourse, which in the long term creates further divide. As an example, I have been informed that the due process rights for employees have been significantly altered, where the final determiner for all appeals for grievances and employee terminations rests with the Vice Chancellor of HR.
Mr. Clark, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, sir. That in and of itself just creates distrust and a perception that employees will no longer be treated fairly when it comes to discipline. Federal, state, counties, cities, and municipalities utilize merit boards or a third-party arbiter. Why? Because they recognize that these kinds of systems are engines of stability where employees feel that they will indeed be treated fairly. We ask that you reevaluate your current position on employee due process. Lastly, why do unions exist? Well, it's because there's organizations out there, there's cities, towns, and administrators that lack integrity, character, a sense of fairness, and a moral compass. Only when these individuals are forced to be held to the same standard they hold their employees will employees become more trusting, cooperative, productive, happier, and caring. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Donna Winston.
Good evening, I'm sorry, I got the crud. Thanks, honey. Good evening, President Gutierrez, members of the board, CEC, Dr. Glasper. As most of you may know me, my name is Donna Winston. I started off as an MCCD student who was raising 3 children on my own for many years. During this time, I worked 2 jobs, was taking anywhere from 15 to 21 credit hours per semester, and still had to find time to do my homework and take care of my children. My first introduction to Maricopa was as an adult reentry student. Through my hard work and good grades, I joined Phi Theta Kappa at Estrella Mountain. Still my favorite campus, Ernie. I overcame my fear, but I did it with a support system that was phenomenal. Through tenacity and determination, I was able to continue on my journey. My support system included my mom, my children, my close friends like Lynn and Marcia, and a higher education system that encouraged my success as a student, again, Maricopa. Gail Snyder, my psychology instructor, and Dr. Anna Solly found solutions where at one time I only saw roadblocks. I was encouraged to submit an essay to USA Today All Academic Scholarship. I was awarded the scholarship, which enabled me to transfer to ASU, where I earned my baccalaureate. The reason I share this with you is to tell you how much I love this organization and what it has done for me. It gave me the strength to move forward in my life when my fears could have silenced me. I was able to teach my children through hard work and perseverance, you can and will accomplish your goals in your life. Today, I stand before you concerned about the health and the well-being and the vitality of my Maricopa family. I have been a Maricopa employee for 20 years, and 15 of those years have been housed here at district office in the same division. I started becoming more involved with employees and got involved with PSA. I went from a member to a district office president and was fortunate enough to become part of PSA CPD, which is Collaborative Policy Development. I learned so much from my predecessor, Anita Dusick, that I eventually was elected as policy chair. I found my niche, becoming an employee advocate and learning what policies and law, and I haven't stopped no matter how much this administration throws at me. I will never stop being an employee advocate. I was placed in a position where false allegations were lodged against me by then President of PSA, the very organization that strengthened my advocacy and gave it my voice. She made these allegations early in her administration at a time when I was actively attempting to aid her in a new position. She eventually published her abdication of the presidency, but her allegations had been made and administration continued to support them. I had to become my own advocate. I had been convicted and forced to prove my innocence, and VC of HR, along with Mr. Eddie Junna, violated my due process. I did research. I located missing documents that should have remained as part of PSA's archive. I provided evidence, facts, not suppositions, not hearsay, not opinion, facts that proved my innocence from an event that happened 1.5 years ago. I faced many obstacles, cried many nights and days too. I continue to walk with, console, support, and advocate for employees that I feel threatened or silenced. Employees who were and are afraid to voice their concern, afraid of retaliation by an administration that shows signs of dictatorial tendencies rather than democratic values, an administration that prohibits the freedom of association, an administration that continues to attempt to dissolve or collapse an association that has a long and historied reputation for collaborating and cooperating with both administration and the governing board. I am speaking of the employee groups. I am speaking particularly of PSA. Along with that comment that Dr. Glasper says, I empower every one of you and everyone in our district that if there's a problem, to find someone. We have more than just hit a wall.
Excuse me, Ms. Winston, you have 30 seconds.
Wasn't I permitted to?
And I explained to you that seating time, we will not go beyond the 5-minute limitation for all speakers.
Okay. I just want to encourage not just this governing board, because we've all been told as employees that we are not permitted to talk to you or have conversations with you. I want to encourage all the employees of Maricopa to find their voice, to have a voice, and to communicate with the governing board that we have elected. Administration is usually encouraging the interpretation, and we are finding that some of these bullying tactics and non-conventional, misleading accusations, allegations, whatever it is, are being made, and some of the biggest bullies that we have lie within the HR departments. Facing my fear is no stranger to me with this organization, and I am coming before you with incredible fear. Fear of retaliation, fear of abuse from management and administration, fear of being fired for voicing our concerns with you. Oh, my support system is fully intact. I have an amazing husband. I have amazing family and friends. And I'm also concerned, we are also concerned, about this one Maricopa Workforce Committee. Members have shared with us that they've been instructed by VC Shelton Johnson and Eddie Jenna to keep any discussions private and confidential. We did not give up our rights to you. We did not turn over our power, our voices to you. For you as employee group leaders who have aligned yourself with this type of behavior, shame on you. Shame on you for not reporting out to the employee groups you have been elected to represent. Shame on you for not allowing us to ratify changes made to our employee policy manual. It is an interesting phenomenon that the VC of HR has published the following statement. Representation requires a certain skill set. I am certain secrecy should not be included in that skill set.
Ms. Winston, your time has expired.
Yes.
The last person I have is Terry A. There is no Terry A. Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am. Could we have your last name, please?
Sure, Adrians.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll continue on. It is unprofessional to conduct business as MCCD without transparency, to work in the dark, and to keep things very secretive. It goes against the very core of our mission, vision, and values. One Maricopa Workforce Committee members have shared they were instructed by the VC Shelton, Johnson, and Eddie Jenna to keep any discussions private and confidential. Why? Did we not give up our rights to you? We did not turn over our power and our voice to you, and for you employee group leaders, you have aligned yourselves with this type of behavior. Shame on you for not reporting out to the employee groups you have been elected to represent. Shame on you for not allowing us to ratify changes made to our employee policy manual. It is interesting phenomena that VCHR has published the following statement. Representation requires a certain skill set. I'm not sure secrecy should be included in that skill set. And then we have the latest question of the day. As an employee, what is your greatest interest in the consolidation of 5 employee group appendices as it is related to the abandonment policy category topics? Abandonment policy category. What is this in reference to, and why have you not provided a better analysis along with specific detail? Please publish the results of this survey in its entirety with all responses so everyone in the district can review. As employee groups, we overcame a lot, but the one thing we were most proud of was our policy manuals. When I became all CPD policy chair, we were given the task to create a staff common policy. I would like to mention that when I was all CPD policy chair, we accomplished moving common policies over together as a group of employees. Overcoming our differences of opinions, we made things happen. We had control of our employee policies. We were transparent. We reported out to our constituents. We ratified new and amended policies together as employees. And by the way, it was also the last time we received raises. We are beginning you to follow the law and take your power back as MCCD's governing board, as the overseers of your employees, and to honor the contract that your predecessors honored us with by endorsing the information of our employee groups. Our employee groups were identified and became official by the governing board in May 1990, sanctioned by your predecessors who approved the employee group associations, a legal binding contract by the past board who recognized the need for these groups. We are asking you to take your power back and allow your employees to have a fair due process at every level of employment. Supporting documentation of May 1990, next heading. I know I have helped many employees over the years, employees I am happy to call my friends. I am asking them to stand together beside me. We have been instructed to not converse with our governing board. We are asking for MCCD employees to start sharing their stories and concerns with this governing board that we have elected. Dr. Glasper is starting a new job at League for Innovation, and we truly wish him well. He has sat on many boards. As a board member of any organization, nonprofit or not, it's the board's responsibility to build membership, create a revenue source for these organizations to continue its mission, vision, etc. Please don't get me wrong, Dr. Glasper. I feel these boards you sit on are a very important part of your mission and vision with MCCD and our community. What I am confused about is why is VC Shelton Johnson upset with other MCCD employees who sit on boards? Again, the employees don't begrudge this. We just think it's a little unfair, biased, and why would anyone feel the need to attack me because I sit on the ME ASCOP's board on my own time, and the membership fee is our own personal money, not Maricopa's. This is a prime example of bullying and unfair treatment because of personalities, not fact. In conclusion, like Jim said, if Jim goes first, okay, we all encourage all MCCD employees to join me as cops and request your membership packet now before our administration starts attacking you based on personality, not fact. Thank you.
Thank you. The last person is, I believe, Elizabeth Buckton.
Well, some of you know who I am, and some of you don't. But I'm back. I stood with Donna and I fought. I righted the wrongs of others. And as a concerned citizen, I am angry at this board for relinquishing their rights to Dr. Glasper over HR. The current VC HR made a mess at the state of Arizona. My daughter was one of her victims as an at-will employee. And I say, shame on you, you're a bully. And that's not what Maricopa is all
Ma'am,
about.
excuse me. We won't allow that. If you have something to say that goes to policy, you may do so, but you may not use that forum to accuse an individual and to confront an individual. If you continue to do so, I will ask you to cease.
Well,
So you may proceed, but you may proceed in a civil fashion.
I believe I was civil.
I believe you were not, and I am the chairman of the board, and I'm telling you once more, you may proceed in a civil fashion.
I ask that the board investigate what is going on here. Too much secrecy, too much behind the closed doors. I worked for Maricopa for 16 years. And I was proud. I can't stand up here and say that today. I say shame on a lot of you.
Thank you. That concludes the citizens interim. Thank you all very, very much. The next item on the agenda is the Chancellor's report. Dr. Glasper.
Mr. President, members of the board, I do not have a report tonight, but I would like to cede my time to Ryan DeMena to give a legislative update.
Excellent. Mr. DeMena. Welcome.
Thank you. President Gutierrez, members of the board, Chancellor Glasper, members of CEC, and all others present. My name is Ryan Demena with Demena Associates, and Demena Associates provides government relations services to the Community College District here in Maricopa. I'm here this evening to provide you with a brief legislative update. Today marks the 16th day of the 52nd Legislature, second regular session. The deadline for Senate bills to be introduced is this coming Monday, February the 1st, while the deadline for House bills to be introduced is Monday, February 8th. To date, Arizona lawmakers have introduced 860 bills, and there are presently 1,702 bill folders open at Legislative Council. Historically, there have been roughly 1,200 to 1,400 bills introduced every legislative session, and of those introduced, roughly 300 are eventually signed into law. As discussed at the January 12th Governing Board retreat, the district's 2016 legislative agenda consists of 5 primary components. The first is state aid. As Arizona's revenue projections continue to improve, Maricopa will work with policymakers to reinstate state aid. The enterprise model. The district has the limited ability to partner with the private sector to generate additional revenue, so the district will pursue the statutory changes necessary to allow community colleges to enter into these agreements and ensure that the resulting revenues are excluded from expenditure limit calculations. Expenditure limitation relief. As the result of a 2015 interim study committee tasked with reviewing the constitutional expenditure limitation for community colleges, Arizona's community college system will work to do the following. Assign additional weight in the formula for students enrolled in career and technical education courses. Clarify that revenues resulting from enterprise activities are excluded from the expenditure limit calculation. And ensure that FTSE estimates deviate less from the actual FTSE count. The fourth is red tape reduction. We would seek to eliminate outdated and unnecessary statutory requirements. And number 5, of course, is defense. The chairwoman of the Senate Education Committee, Senator Sylvia Allen, is sponsoring the expenditure limitation legislation, while the chairman of the House Government and Higher Education Committee, Bob Thorpe, is sponsoring the red tape reduction measure. We are already tracking approximately 50 bills and researching their potential impact on the district. We're also working closely with other districts to coordinate our lobbying efforts. We'll be sure to provide you with additional updates as the legislative session progresses. And if I could just take a quick moment, I want to thank district staff that supports us in these efforts down at the legislature. Everyone from Debbie to Judy to Gay and others, it's just a terrific team. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Questions? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you. Mr. Demena, the 5th item that you mentioned is, did I understand you correctly, defense?
President Gutierrez, Ms. McGrath, that is correct, defense.
What defense of what? Would you explain that for me, please?
At this point, we're still in the bill introduction period, so there's a lot of unknown out there. And if there are proposals that are brought forth that would harm the district, then we would obviously work to defeat those.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Demena, can you tell me where Mr. Thorpe is from?
Mr. Thorpe is from northern Arizona, President Gutierrez.
And Senator Allen?
Senator Allen is from Snowflake.
From Snowflake. So they both represent rural community colleges?
That is correct, President Gutierrez.
Thank you. And they are both involved in our primary issue?
That is correct.
Now, I take it that the impact of limitations, et cetera, is different upon those two colleges or upon that college system than it is upon ours?
President Gutierrez, that's my understanding as well. I know that Senator Allen is very interested in this issue because the district that she represents is in need of that relief.
And the relief in their case, as I understand it, is that they have an extraordinary amount of capital they can't use.
That is
that
correct,
correct?
President Gutierrez.
And in our case, we don't have an extraordinary amount of capital that we can use. So our interests diverge, but we are on the same bill, are we not?
We are, President Gutierrez.
Then it is in our interest to work very closely with these two individuals.
I would agree, President Gutierrez. They have both been outstanding champions on this issue thus far. So,
Thank you very much. There are no further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Devetta. We now move to the approval of the order of the agenda.
I move approval.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, signify by saying aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Does anyone, is there a second, first of all? Second. Does anyone wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, all those in favor of the motion before us to approve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Motion, all in favor of approval, we've done that. The non-consent agenda, item 15.1, designation of interim chancellor. Discussion.
Is it appropriate to make a motion, Mr. President?
I would like to make a motion. My
Ms.
motion.
Haber.
I would like to recommend and that we take a vote on authorizing the appointment of Maria Harper Marinick, our provost, as interim chancellor of the Maricopa County Community College District effective March 1st, 2016.
Second.
There is, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, President Gutierrez. We have a flawed request for, at least in my view, request for proposal for a company to search for the chancellor. And I feel that this entire thing is dubious, and I'm very concerned that we are not considering naming an outside chancellor. We're taking Dr. Marinick from her position. We're going to have to fill that position. We're going to fill a person's position who filled that. It's going to be like those advertisements you see on television with the dominoes going down. I think we'd be so much better off with an outside person. We wouldn't have to make anyone change positions. And also, I think that this, I don't know if it will harm or help Dr. Marinick's position in the event that she applies for chancellor. But I think that it would discourage other applicants who might be excellent applicants from applying, because they will see that we've already put what they would perceive as our favorite person in this position. And I think this is a poor idea to put her in this precarious position. Thank you.
Ms. Livingston.
Upon hearing the faculty this evening and upon some prior discussion, obviously, and the suggestion to Dr. Harper Marinick, or the request, and it was up to her to say yes or no. But upon hearing the faculty this evening, not just once, twice, many times, they're very concerned about having somebody at the forefront that could hit the ground running. Also, with her fantastic educational background and knowledge, I think we're in good hands. And at this point, I feel she is perhaps, while we have excellent administrators around us, one of the few candidates that could step right in and hold this institution not just together, but allow it to grow during our productive search for our permanent chancellor.
Mr. Sarr.
I agree, and keep in mind this is a temporary position. It is not by any means construed to be the permanent position for chancellor. We are in the process of going through an extensive process, a worldwide search for the next chancellor. To this day, we don't know of anybody who's applied because we just started the process, actually. So this is a temporary assignment. We found Dr. Harper Marinick to be able to operate as the assistant chancellor to Dr. Glasper for many years, and has done an outstanding job in his absence, and I think fully capable of handling the opportunities that arise from the chancellor's position in the interim until we can appoint a permanent chancellor.
Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Smith, would you please call the roll?
Can you hear me? Yes. Mr. Burke,
Aye.
Ms. Haver,
Aye.
Mr. Heap,
Abstain.
Ms. Livingston,
Aye.
Mrs. McGrath,
I'd like to explain my vote. We are using an RFP that was put out in 2012 to search for the chancellor. And I don't think that we should be doing that. I think that it's way too old. The RFP calls for people, for the firm to find executives. It does not name finding a chancellor, and I think that is one of the most important things that we do. And I think we should have a new RFP for this. I'm very concerned that we are just going on as though we've done nothing wrong when I'm using an RFP that old. I think is not a violation of law, certainly a violation of ethics. We have many firms that would probably like to be involved in this, and they are not having an opportunity, and I'm not able to vote on this because I don't feel that it's in accordance with the Arizona statutes, and I abstain from voting.
Mr. Saar,
Aye.
and Mr. Gutierrez.
Aye.
The vote is 5-2 in favor.
Motion passes. Congratulations to the Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, Maria Harper Marinick. The Vice Chancellor is in Aspen on business for this particular college system, but I have reached her and told her she would be the subject of this vote. She is very graciously accepted. Item number 16, Chancellor. The approval of resolution of Taylor versus MCCD.
Mr. President, members of the board, on 16-1, it is recommended that the governing board authorize the chancellor or his designee to prepare and execute documents necessary to resolve Taylor versus MCCCD in accordance with the terms provided to the governing board and to make this distribution as required by the terms of the agreement. That's my recommendation, and I will, if there's any questions, Mr. Lee Combs is here too.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions to Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Ms. McGrath?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chancellor, would you please explain to us what Taylor versus MCCD is, please?
Mr. Combs?
This is an agreed resolution, mediated resolution of an employment dispute that has not gone to court. The details of the matter are contained in a briefing memo that I submitted to the board. To protect the confidentiality of the parties, I would prefer to discuss details, if necessary, in an executive session. And I invited the board to schedule such a session when I submitted the memo. None was scheduled, so I would like to leave it at that.
Let me add that none was requested as well.
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
When do the taxpayers find out about what this lawsuit is and what their money is being spent on? When do we have that opportunity?
The settlement agreement will be a public document, be available when it's signed.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear when it's going to be available.
It will be available when it is signed. It is not available now because it is a draft document.
Any further discussion?
As I recall, we received that information during agenda review, and we discussed it during agenda review. So we have received the information.
If there is no further discussion, Ms. McGrath, do you request a roll call vote?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. 16.3, Chancellor's Executive Council Leadership Statement.
Mr. Gutierrez, there's 16.2.
16.2. Getting ahead of myself there. 16.2. Chancellor.
16.2 is a resolution of Al Alawai dispute, and it is recommended that the governing board authorize the chancellor or his designee to prepare and execute documents necessary to resolve the Al Alawai dispute in accordance with the terms provided to the governing board and to make the distributions required by the terms of this agreement.
You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Mr. President.
Ms. McGrath.
Thank you. Mr. Chancellor, what is the Al Alawi dispute, please?
Ms. McGrath, consistent with the Taylor item, our legal counsel Lee Combs provided our governing board with details and again requested that exec session be scheduled if there were any questions, and it was not addressed at that time. And I would assume that I will ask Mr. Combs to provide a response on this, similar to the last comment.
This is another matter that has not been in court. It is a resolution of a disputed employment matter that resulted in a negotiated resignation.
Further questions or discussions?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. McGrath.
when will we and the taxpayers find out about the resolution of this and what it involves and the amount involved?
Similarly, once the agreement is signed, it would become a public document.
Do you have a time frame in mind, or?
It would be, our objective was to receive the board's approval and execute the document immediately after.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Combs, will that information be disseminated so that the taxpayers and the employees?
It will be a public record. I don't think it would be our intent to disseminate it as a press release or anything of that kind, but it would be a public record for individuals to request.
Mr. President, Mr. Combs,
McGrath.
how does a person find out about it? Do we have to do a public
President?
information request, or what? How do we get that information when it's a public, becomes
Ms.
a public
McGrath,
record?
there's a point of order.
Yes.
Point of order.
I would like to encourage the board to go back and read emails this past week from Mr. Combs. The amount of the settlement is in that email.
Mr. Burke, that is not a point of order. It is a point of information.
I didn't
But
say
lem-
point of order.
But that's the only way you can disrupt an ongoing statement, is through a point of order. Ms. McGrath still held the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was recognized. I apologize.
Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked Mr. Combs a question. How do we go about getting this public information? Do we have to do an information request, or how does it come about to us?
If the board would wish, if you would wish to see it, I will make it personally available to you.
I'm concerned, Mr. President, Mr. Combs, I'm concerned on behalf of the taxpayers whose money we're spending here, and I wonder how they find out about it. Do you give me the information and I then publish it, or what?
Taxpayers are not shy about making public records requests when they are curious about a matter. So I believe that they are well informed of their rights to access to public records.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Let me state for the record that once these are settled, they are all public documents, and people regularly review each and all of our actions and often criticize them. So I'm sure they will be reviewed. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Item 16.3 is advisory, and before us, that is, we will, there is no action necessary. Chancellor.
Mr. President, members of the board, there's a recommendation that the members of the Chancellor's Executive Council would like to recommend the governing board entertain and endorse the signed CEC leadership statement, which will be read by President Ernie Lara. This statement affirms CEC's commitment to business continuity, sustaining One Maricopa activities, and maintaining our focus on student success.
President Lara.
President Gutierrez, may I approach the podium?
Yes, you may, sir.
President Gutierrez, members of the governing board, Chancellor Glasper, members of the Chancellor's Executive Council, and guests. I am Ernie Lara, president of Estrella Mountain Community College. However, tonight I am representing the Chancellor's Executive Council. I was selected by peers to represent them because I am the most senior president of our 10 colleges. And I guess by senior, I'm also senior by age.
It happens.
Governing board members and Chancellor Glasper, you were provided a copy of the Chancellor's Executive Council leadership statement at the January 12th special meeting. Copies of the same statement are at your place tonight. This evening, the Chancellor's Executive Council would like the governing board to publicly entertain and endorse the following leadership statement. The Maricopa Community College District has long enjoyed a stellar national reputation as a large, well-run, innovative, high-quality, student-centered community college system. Undeniably, one major reason, among many others, for this national prominence has been the chancellors who have served the district so well throughout the years. Most recently, the district has benefited greatly from 13 years of effective management and outstanding leadership by Chancellor Rufus Glasper. We are indebted to the vision, organization, and financial stability and strategic direction of Chancellor Glasper that he has provided during his long-standing tenure. We are grateful for his dedication and commitment to you, our governing board, and to our students, as well as to our many communities, donors, employees, colleges, and the district. We wish him well in his new leadership role, and we look forward to seeing his continued success. With his departure, Maricopa faces a critical period of leadership transition. As the Chancellor's Executive Council, we affirm our collective commitment to our district's vision, mission, values, and to the governing board's outcomes and strategic directions. We pledge to continue our work to realize the One Maricopa vision and to complete the many strategic initiatives underway. We understand the critical importance of business continuity during a time of transition and commit to ensuring the work of the district in serving students and that it will continue as planned. We know it's natural for students, communities, donors, employees, and others to have some concern about operational continuity and stability as we manage this transition. We assure you, our governing board, as well as the many stakeholders of the Maricopa Community College District, that we will provide the leadership necessary to sustain and continue the incredible progress the district had made under Chancellor Glasper's guidance. Our focus, like yours, has been and will continue to be on the success of our students and the many different communities that benefit from our work. We thank you, Governing Board, for your wisdom and leadership during this transition period. Members of the Chancellor's Executive Council stand ready to support you and assist to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lara. Mr. Sarr.
I'll make a motion that we approve this resolution from our CEC.
We have been asked to endorse the resolution. I would point out, if you go to the last page, that it has been signed by each member of the CEC. I want to thank them. It's an extraordinary statement of confidence in the transition. Undoubtedly will be difficult, but necessary, and I think it will go well with each of you sustaining the direction, the mission of the colleges and of the district. Thank you all very much. You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. The motion passes, unanimously endorsed. We're going to business services. I would point out that the next two items, 17.1 and 17.1A, are related. We will hear 17.1 first and then go to 17.1A, of course, but they are related in nature. We will vote on them separately, but they are related in nature. Keep that in mind. Ms. Thompson, 17.1.
Mr. President, members of the board, item 17.1 is the request for the board to ratify a contract with Gallagher Benefit Services. This is a contract for $400,000. It is for consulting services with the purpose of helping the district to complete a comprehensive district-wide classification and compensation study. The award of this contract occurred after a RFP process commenced, and we received some proposals. It should have come to the board, but it did not. I believe that was an inadvertent error, but we are seeking ratification at this point in time.
Discussion, is there a motion?
I move approval.
Moved, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion, Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think that we should be taking motions and voting upon this. This is being investigated by the Attorney General's office, and I think that we should wait for his report before we do anything further with this. It's a major breach of policy and state law, and I think that we should keep our hands off of this until the Attorney General has finished his investigation and given us a report.
Mr. Sy?
I agree that it is a breach of board policy, and I think the Chancellor has recognized that and has taken the appropriate steps to ratify the issue. What we're doing tonight is giving our approval. I don't see this as any violation of state law. This is simply a board policy that requires board members to approve expenditures of X number of dollars, and this falls within that. So I'm not happy that it happened by any means, and I think appropriate measures based on discussions you've had with the Chancellor have been put in place. And those that were involved, I think, are well aware of how the policy is supposed to work and have assured those supervision that it won't happen again.
Ms. Haber?
I remember when Gallagher Benefit Services did their presentation, they were very well received by all of us. And I think that it was just absolutely for sure that we were going to approve this. It's just by accident that we didn't have that opportunity. And it came before the Attorney General because a board member put it before the Attorney General. And I believe that it's sort of making a big to-do over a small mistake that happened. And so I'm very much in favor that we vote in favor of granting the award of $400,000, as we would have done had this little error not occurred.
Ms. Livingston?
Errors happen. I understand that. This wasn't a little error. It was a big error, and I think we all have to adjust our mindset to not a little error, but a larger error in judgment. I'm saddened to hear one of our own board members, toss somebody else under the proverbial bus. I think that should be let go. However it got there, it got there. I will say this, my vote will reflect on the fact that I realize this is a large error, not a small error. And no other reason is for my vote this evening. I stand with the board, whatever the outcome is.
Mr. Heap.
I so often sit here.
Is your microphone on?
I so often sit here and listen to the meetings, and in this case, a inadvertent mistake was made. it appears, but the numbers by the size of the mistake have pulled in processes not under our control. They should be followed up. Let them review it, make a decision, and let's move forward. But and that's all happening right now. So I think let's see what happens, and we have plenty of time to review it. Thank you.
Ms. Haver.
I would like to remind the board that the way we found out that there was an error was through Ms. Thompson, who called each one of us separately to explain to us exactly what happened. And she admitted there had been an error, and she wanted us to know about it. And so there has been no cover-up. This has been out there in the open from day one. And so with that in mind, and I agree, it isn't really a small error, and I agree with Ms. Livingston, $400,000 is a big error, but nevertheless, it was not intentional, obviously not intentional, and for that reason, I think we should vote in favor of this.
Let me make clear that we have no indication that the Attorney General is investigating this. What we do have is knowledge that a particular board member presented this to the Attorney General under the mistaken notion that this board was under the state procurement code, or so she reported to us. We are not. In fact, there is a violation of our policy. That it is a clear violation of our policy, and it is a substantial violation of our policy. It's $400,000. And it deserves to be investigated so that the public and each of us on this board is assured that it was no more than an inadvertent error. If it was beyond that, we intend to discover it, and we intend to take this report and give it to the Attorney General. There was some notion earlier of why are we keeping it secret? We are not. The report will come first to this board in executive session, and it will be made public. And it will be turned over to the Attorney General. A full and complete investigation. It will not be suspicions. It will not be paranoia. It will not be allegations. It will not be accusations. It will be a full and complete investigation. And that's what will be turned over to the Attorney General. Let me stress again, this board, this administration, the Maricopa County Community College System has not been notified that we are, and this action is under investigation. It is not. So, you've heard the motion that's been moved and seconded. All those.
I call for a roll call vote.
Roll call
please.
vote, please, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mrs. Haver,
Aye.
Mr. Heap,
Same.
Mrs. Livingston,
Nay.
Mrs. McGrath,
For the reasons I stated earlier, I abstain.
Mr. Saar,
Aye.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Aye.
The vote is 4-1-2.
Motion passes. 17.1A, the related item. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, it is recommended that the board adopt the attached resolution to this action item, directing the hiring of an external law firm to investigate the circumstances surrounding the award of a contract to Gallagher Benefit Services without prior approval of the governing board as required by board policy.
I move approval.
Second? Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, President. Yes. The hiring of this law firm is to do what we said we were going to do. You did say so. So we have a process of selecting a law firm whose expertise is in this area, and I don't know who that is. I don't think it's our job to do, to find who that individual or firm is, but we expect the outcome to be well documented and researched, and make sure that nothing illegal or immoral was accomplished during the process that we just talked about.
Indeed, there, just explanation, there are firms that have been pre-approved through procurement by the district, and a selection will be made from that list. We intend that a full, let me say again, a full investigation of this take place. If there are reason to believe that a inappropriate action has been taken by any staff person, any board member, any administrator of this district, it will be handed over to the Attorney General. It will be received in executive session, but it ultimately will be made public. Let me put an asterisk to that. If it goes to the Attorney General or the county attorney may wish that it not be made public, and because it would be part of an ongoing investigation if that is the case. If that is not the case, if there is no reason to believe that a violation of law has taken place, then it would be made public. You've heard the motion. Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Aye.
Mrs. Haver?
Aye.
Mr. Heap?
Aye.
Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
Mrs. McGrath?
Abstain.
Mr. Saar?
Aye.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Aye.
The vote is 6-1.
By a vote of 6-1, the motion has passed. 17.2, approve conceptual approval of remodel of shop warehouse. This is why we have an English department. In a building A at the Maricopa Skill Center. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, as you said, Mr. President, this is conceptual approval for the remodel of the shop warehouse space in Building A at the Maricopa Skills Center, which is part of Gateway. It's remodeling approximately 6,000 square feet of warehouse shop space and installing improvements in Classroom A, and will eventually support the relocation of precision machining manufacturing programs to the Skills Center campus from Gateway, so that there is more synergy between the two and better utilization. We recommend its approval.
You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 17.2? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. 17.3, construction manager at risk, selection of the new Cloud Song Center for Scottsdale Community College. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a recommendation to approve the selection of Oakland Construction as construction manager at risk for the Cloud Song Center project. This is one of Scottsdale's bond projects, and I believe its last large project. It will allow for the design and construction of a new 38,000 square foot multi-use building at Scottsdale Community College that also will include the Indigenous Scholars Institute.
You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
Move that we accept the approval.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. 17.4, partial GMP contract award for the remodeling and expansion of the social behavior and nursing buildings at Scottsdale Community College. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, this partial guaranteed maximum price award is to Caliente Construction, and it's to remodel and renovate the social behavioral nursing science building at Scottsdale Community College. This is recommended in order to keep on schedule for fall 2016 occupancy, and it will allow proceeding with an early construction package award for interior demolition within the vacant NU building and advanced purchase of air conditioning, as well as contractor submittals for fire, sprinkler, plumbing, and electrical systems, and allow the college and the contractor to keep on schedule.
You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
I move acceptance.
Second.
Partial contract award.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 17.5, sale of property at northeast corner of 40th Street and Cottonwood Lane, Phoenix, Arizona. South Mountain Community College. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is for the sale of a parcel of undeveloped land located at 40th Street in Cottonwood to Wentworth Storage LLC for the amount of $3.5 million.
You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Mr. President?
Mr. Sarr and then Ms. McGrath. Mr. Sarr.
Ms. Thompson, can you give us a summary of how that price was arrived at?
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Sarr, in general, what we did was we considered what we purchased for the property, which I believe was around $2.75 million, as it says in the agenda item. And then we also had an appraisal of about and that was $3.35 million that came in as an appraisal. And through negotiation with the purchaser, we came up with a $3.5 million amount.
Thank you.
Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does this money go to South Mountain, or does it come back to the district? How do we do these?
Ms. McGrath. Excuse me, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, and Ms. McGrath, these are funds that will go back to South Mountain Community College. As anyone who has visited the college, you've probably taken note of the original older buildings on the campus and the disrepair that they're in. So this money will go at least some ways towards helping to improve those buildings and maintain their usefulness and safety, and so the district is returning the funds to the college.
Further questions?
Yes. How did the school get the land in the first place? Wasn't it purchased by the district?
Mr. President, members of the board, Ms. McGrath, these were all district bond funds. I don't recall if this was a specific allocation to the college or if it was part of the district-wide purposes that the district elected to use the funds for. But because of the needs of the college in any event, the recommendation is that it go back to the college.
Discussion. If not, you've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes. We are at 18.1. Healthcare funding. Ms. LaKoya Shelton Johnson.
Good evening, and thank you, President Gutierrez, members of the board. This is a request to recommend that the governing board approve EBAC's recommendation for the implementation of a benefit proposal to be effective July 1, 2016. EBAC is the Employee Benefits Advisory Committee and is made up of various employee group representatives as well as members from administration. The actuarial projections for fiscal year 16-17 medical premiums needed to fund the Maricopa self-funded medical plan reflect that Maricopa is projected to need an additional $1.29 million in funding. The Employee Benefits Advisory Committee, EBAC, has reviewed several different cost-saving options to obtain the additional funding. EBAC is requesting an increase of $549,000 needed to fund a portion of the additional costs. EBAC will make the changes to the medical plan design to obtain the remaining portion of the $1.29 million.
You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the fiscal year 16-17 healthcare funding as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Discussion. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Before we leave this section, there's something I should explain. I should have explained it earlier. During the course of our deliberations, we have an earlier meeting called an agenda meeting where we go over these items and have the opportunity to question the vice chancellors, etc. So we have, each of the board members have had an opportunity to view this, to discuss this, and to understand what is before us, to agree to go forward or not to agree to go forward. That happens in an agenda meeting. They are open, they are publicly posted. You're invited to go there and be bored for 2 or 3 hours. But each of these items has been discussed in some detail.
I'd like to add something. Also, we are encouraged to call the presidents or whoever else might have put something on the agenda. And so we do have ample opportunity to find out more details if there's something that we're not sure about. I know I've done this myself and was quite impressed with how quickly I was able to receive all the information that I needed and to make my decision when we would eventually vote. And so it's important to realize that. Thank you.
We are on information items. Item 19.1, employment. Vice Chancellor.
Okay, thank you, President Gutierrez and members of the board. And if I may just say, I find our agenda review meetings to be riveting. And I think that our attendees do
Thank
as well.
you so much.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
You do need a life, don't you?
You're not the first one to say that, sadly.
We can settle an admission for better seats if anybody's interested.
If it pleases the board, may I combine items 19.1 and 2?
Without objection?
Sure.
Proceed.
Okay, very good. Thank you. For the period of December 1st through the 31st, we had a total number of 13 new hires. And for that same period, we had a total number of 14 separations.
Is there any questions? If not, we will go on to the next information item, which is 20, business services. Review of the proposed fee changes, fiscal year 2016, 2017. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is an information item, and next month, February, we'll be bringing this item for requested action by the board. The item contains quite a lot of backup on each of the proposals for changes. There are 150 new fees that are proposed, increases to 450 fees, and reductions or elimination to 209 fees, and the net revenue impact is estimated by the colleges at $226,000.
You've heard the explanation. Gay is here to give us greater detail if we so choose. Are there any questions? Would you like to go forward, please?
Mr. Gutierrez, I believe that the presentation has more to do with the next information item on tuition setting rather than the fees.
You
But
just
if
got
you're
ahead of
ready for
yourself.
that, that's fine.
Well, don't move.
Okay.
Item 20.2, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, this item also is an information item, and in next month, we also will be bringing this back for action by the governing board. We are in the cycle of our process, that's the formal review process, though everyone, I believe, is aware, and certainly the board is well aware, of the many meetings of the board's Budget and Finance Committee where different scenarios were discussed on a monthly basis since about August as to possibilities for fiscal 16-17. This specific item addresses the proposal that is being put forward for a $2 per credit hour increase in tuition and fees from $84 to $86 a credit hour. There is information that Gay will share in a moment, which also includes our recommendation for an increase in the tax levy by 2%. That's not specifically part of this item or the action we're requested related to this item for next month, but it will be part of the bigger package that we're requesting as we seek the board action on tax increases in the budget itself. And I'll turn it over to Gay to share some information. In general, these proposals are shared and requested of the board because of the needs that we are proposing to be funded that we think are very important as the district moves forward in its future.
Please go forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gutierrez, governing board members, Chancellor Glasper, CEC members, audience members. This is the first presentation that I've given to the board formally on the budget preparation for next year. However, in terms of our budget process, we really started last summer, and we've had many meetings with the board, with this in subcommittee, and with our Financial Advisory Council to get us to this point. And I'll present to you some information, and we'll go pretty quickly for that reason. And again, with our budget process, it's a cyclical process. The newest part now is the input that we've had from the Governing Board Subcommittee on Budget and Finance, which met monthly and provided insights, asked questions, and we've provided information too for several months. In terms of the projected resources, there's nothing really new here. It does include a potential $2 per credit hour increase in tuition and a 2% increase in the tax levy. We won't have the absolute final numbers on the tax levy information until February 10th, when we get the information from the county assessor. At that time, we'll have a pretty good handle on the revenue availability, and so that might change between now and the next meeting, but hopefully not by a whole lot. In terms of the proposed uses, we have some mandatory and high priority expenditure uses. From year to year, the list really doesn't change. Sometimes the amounts change, but these are really the cost of doing business next year, pretty much the same businesses we have in the past. There are a couple of initiatives for technology, for maintaining our insurance, for our 60-40 faculty ratio, and our continuation of our student success initiative for a loan default management system. So in terms of compensation and benefits, there's also a recommendation you saw tonight with the flex benefit approval for health insurance, a change in ASRS, and also with a 2% across the board salary adjustment and a step increase for all of those who are eligible. So the grand total, we would have new revenues matching the proposed uses. So in terms of tuition, this will be a request to increase by $2 per credit hour. It's a total of about $60 and about a 2.4% increase. There was no increase in tuition in the current year, so this would be increase for next year. And as part of the budget process, I go to every college and present this information to student groups, and I know some of the students are encouraged to contact you if they have want to take a position on this, and some of them actually do, and that's really a good thing. I've always told them that they are welcome to be a part of the process. And then from the property tax perspective, we do think that property values will increase slightly again this year, which means if we were to keep the levy the same, the tax rate would have to drop, or else we would collect too much money. The recommendation, though, is for a 2% increase in the tax levy. That would mean for a person now who had a $100,000 house, we think the value of the house will increase slightly next year. And the impact of a 2% increase in our levy would be $2.52 per $100,000. So if you had a $200,000 house, your impact would be $5.04. And finally, with the Maricopa approach, we've looked over the recession at making cuts when we had to, particularly when we lost a lot of the state funding. There has not been a tuition or tax increase every year. They've been pretty looked at doing that, not as a first resort, but we've looked at doing that and making a recommendation to the board when the belief has been that's been a needed thing in order to continue the business of the district. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions of Ms. Murphy, Mr. Sarr?
Yeah, can you go back to the tuition screen?
This one.
Yep. The annual cost, what is that based on?
It's based on 30 credit hours per year. That's how we calculate a FTSE, and that's pretty standard per academic year.
I want to make, and in our colleges, similar to maybe ASU, there is no maximum. If you take 40 credits, you're still going to pay the tuition for those additional 10 credits.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was
Further discussion. Mr. Heap?
Last year, we have to say thank you. We received a letter that we were going to get a reduction in taxes, and $2.47 per $100, which was very good. Everybody was looking forward to it, and I ran around the county at large position and gave out this information. Well, and after the taxes came out, everyone received increases. I haven't found anybody who got a decrease anywhere in the county, and levies as high as 15%. So, you know, I don't mind 2%, and I don't mind $2, but I do mind 15%. And now I'm hearing that looks like property taxes could go up again, and it's going to be larger again. So help us explain this to the taxpayer and where we're going to go next year. Is it good? Like you said, $5, and so it's increased per $5 per $100.
Ms. Murphy.
Excuse me. Mr. Gutierrez, Mr. Heap, I'm also acutely aware of concerns from taxpayers. When you get your property tax bill, there will be a telephone number to call if you want information about the Maricopa Community Colleges, and that rings at my desk, and I answer all those calls. So what happens is that different taxing jurisdictions may choose to increase their tax levies. Last year, we did not. It also depends on how your piece of property was valued relative to other pieces of property in Maricopa County. So all I can say is across the board, the increases that came last year or in the current year were not because of something Maricopa did. In the past, we have seen changes in assessment rates with the state looking to change property taxes on business property and business owners. and sometimes that has an impact.
Did we receive benefits from this tax increases levy, as high as 15% per, and so on and so forth?
No, Mr. Heap, we did not. We did not increase.
Then, in
the
other
tax
words,
levy
on
for
this tax
year.
bill, it says that the price went up, but actually no one got, this went to someplace else, even though it says community colleges?
Mr. Heap, individual taxpayers may see differences, but across the board, we did not collect any more than we did in the prior year. If you saw an increase, or other folks saw an increase, it means that someone else had a decrease to offset that, because we didn't collect any more than we did the prior year.
Appreciate an audit of that and find out where the decreases and where the balance was, because I'm really having a problem finding anyone that got a decrease anywhere. So thank you, if you could.
Well, the way the system works is that we work with Maricopa County, and they do the tax collection. We just give them the levy amount, and they actually issue the billing, and they collect it and provide it to us.
So I have to say thank you that someone else paid the bill. That I paid the bill.
It could be.
But let me stress again, we did not impose a 2% levy, which is an amount we could have last year.
That is correct.
That is not to say other political subdivisions did not increase their levy. So
Also
a fire district, a water district, a flood district, city or town could have,
That is correct.
but we did not.
That also is correct.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify that. Ms.
But
Or K-12.
That's
Ms.
right.
Livingston.
Question, when this comes before us, I believe Ms. Thompson and both yourself laid out three different scenarios for us, correct?
Yes,
Will
ma'am.
Will we be voting on any or all of the three, or is it going to come to a consensus? I got lost there.
Mr. Gutierrez, Ms. Livingston,
Mhm.
the scenario that you're seeing today is one that would provide a $2 increase in tuition and a 2% increase in the property tax levy. And with those two adjustments, we would be able to accommodate the uses that have been explained that are listed for you and that we've explained in prior meetings.
So this will be the only choice before us, or no?
Well, Mrs. Livingston, this is the recommendation.
Okay.
If you were to direct something else, Mr. Gutierrez, Ms. Livingston, then we would work to accommodate the board's desires.
No, thank you very much.
Further discussion and questions? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you for looking at me. You already knew, right? We've been having a decrease in student enrollment. Can you tell me how much we're down in footsie and student enrollment?
For this year, I think we're looking, Mr. Gutierrez, Mrs. McGrath, I think we're looking to be down another about 2%. Although we are still higher than we were when we entered the recession, we've kind of seen a slow drop off. In the height of the recession, we were increasing 10 to 11% per year increase.
Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering if perhaps we lose students because of the high tuition, if there's not a correlation between tuition and student enrollment. And I'm wondering if perhaps we could consider at least keeping the tuition the same and judging that. I'm wondering, has anyone ever done any studies about that, about where students go when they decide your tuition is too high? Do they perhaps enroll in a computer course at another school?
Mr. Gutierrez, Ms. McGrath, that could be possible. Although I know that we do provide federal financial aid for students, and our neediest students can receive Pell Grants. I know that enrollment at Arizona State University, which has a $10,000 per year plus tuition, and also opportunities at private universities have seen enrollment increases as well. So for at least some students, cost does not seem to be, or tuition does not seem to be a factor. And I'm sure it has to do with making certain that financial aid's available for our neediest students.
Mr. President, one of the problems with this financial aid is we're told that about 70% of the students do not pay it back. And it's becoming a huge problem nationwide. And I'm thinking that if we can reduce the costs of tuition, that we will all be in a better position. Thank you.
I just want to say that, Mr. Gutierrez, Ms. McGrath, we are looking on the Student Loan Default Management Initiative as well to help counsel those students.
Mr. Burke.
We could do some numbers about tuition. Most of our students take an average of 7.5 hours a semester. So if they do that, then they would pay, let's see, about $30 a year in extra tuition. If they take 12 hours, they'd pay $48 a year. If they take 30 hours, and we only have a few students who do that, they would pay $60 extra in tuition. That's $7.40 a month. For the 7.5 hour students, that's $3.30 a month. I don't think this is earth-shaking. And in terms of going somewhere else because of a raise in tuition, we have to ask ourselves, where would they go? We have private universities who charge much more for tuition than we do. They could go to ASU, which charges 4 times the tuition that we do. They could go to proprietary schools that charge much higher tuition than we do. We are the least expensive higher education the first 2 years in the county. We are 80% of the national average for tuition. We're at 78% of the witchy states, the western states. We don't raise tuition every year. We have kept it affordable. And I see this as simply a matter of economics. I bought a car 8 years ago. And several months ago, I went to look at another car. And let me tell you, the price has increased significantly. It's just a matter of pure economics over time. The things that we want, the things that we need are going to increase in value. I don't see that this, I don't believe that this will be prohibitive for students.
Let me say that the last rankings I saw, we were the fifth lowest community college system in the United States, the fifth lowest. The state of Texas, community college system, the colleges receive approximately 1/3 of their funding from the state. They have a 2% requirement as well. Theirs is a requirement. And their tuition is slightly less than ours. California's is slightly less than ours. But we're the fifth lowest in the United States. And we have the challenges economically that we're facing because of the legislature. I think we've done an extraordinary job. And I think that a $2 increase is sad. I would like to be the lowest. I would like to be lower than California's, but unfortunately we don't have California state legislature. I would like to be lower than Texas, but unfortunately we don't have their state legislature either. So given the challenges that we face, I think that the chancellor, the vice chancellor, and the presidents have done an incredible job of maintaining one of the most superb community college systems in the United States, and the fifth lowest tuition in the United States, and I think everyone here should be congratulated for that. If there's no further discussion, monitoring reports, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is the one monitoring report this month is the budget analysis report, which is for the general fund, our main operating budget, and is for the first half of the fiscal year. As I have indicated most months, in terms of expenditures, our expenditures are pretty evenly expended over every month because we have payroll every 2 weeks. And that's a pretty even expenditure every month, and that's our largest expenditure. So our expenditures are on par with prior years and what we would expect for the period. In terms of revenues, that's also on par. We have about 61% that's been recognized, very similar to prior years, and we expect to meet our financial stability requirements that are set by the board.
Discussion. If not, the next item is community linkage. Mr. Burt. Governing board reports.
Yes. This last month, Mr. Sarr and I attended an event in Chandler with the Chandler Chamber of Commerce. They have a program each year of elected officials that are looking at the year ahead that involved state legislators, report from the governor's office, from K through 12 school board members, and 2 of us from the Maricopa Community College District. We were able to give an overview of the district for the year ahead.
Ms. Livingston.
I have no reports this month.
Ms. Haber.
Along with other board members, I attended the grand opening of the Philip D. Randolph Automobile Technology Center at Glendale Community College. And it was quite an exciting event. I was fortunate enough to sit next to Mr. Randolph, who is quite impressive of his own right and was quite thrilled to have this amazing center named after him. There were cars, model cars on display, and it was just an incredible experience. And I'd like to add that after enjoying this, the presentation and walking around and observing everything that this center has to offer, I visited the temporary veteran center, and the people there are comfortable and looking very forward to their new veteran center that we approved, I think it was maybe 2 months ago. And they thanked me and the board for having passed 7-0 that item. I also spent some time with the board of the College and Career Readiness Academy, the Hope College and Career Readiness Academy, that our new charter school that will be built on the South Mountain Community College campus. And everything is going very well. There are many really excellent applicants to be principal of this school, according to Mr. Rose, who's in charge of the whole plan. And so I think we have a lot to look forward to.
Thank you. Mr. Heap.
I also attended the Randolph opening, and it was a great time in my life because I participated in the beginning of this program. I used to be a supplier to General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, and when they were doing their own work in teaching and training, we did all their documentation, and it reduced the information in many forms along the way. And now it comes down to a how can I say it? Full cycle, and it's a pleasure to see what they've done and where they're going. Thank you.
Ms. McGrath.
No comments.
Mr. Sarr.
Among the events that we attended that have been talked about previously, I've had a chance in between meetings to stop by most of our campuses in the last month to just walk around and get a chance to talk to some staff, whether they're faculty or custodians. I also had a chance to talk to some students in each case as much as I can. And that's an enjoyable experience for a board member to do that. You get a different perspective when you're talking eye to eye to somebody than when you're sitting up here. guessing what's on the other side of the eyes that you see. So and driving back and forth to Fountain Hills is not worth it when it comes to time. And if I can spend it on a campus in between those meetings, it really makes my day. So thanks to all those who I've had a chance to talk to.
That completes our governing board reports. Vice Chancellor reports. Are there any reports? If not, the external community reports. The Arizona Association of District Governing Boards, Mr.
No-
Burke.
No report, Mr. President.
Arizona School Board Association, Mr. Sarr.
No report from that.
Arizona Association, or the Association of Community College Trustees, Mr. Sarr.
We are leaving, 4 of us, in a couple weeks to Washington, D.C. for the annual legislative conference. We're going to be listening to some great speakers, members of Congress, and we're also going to be sitting in front of departmental head people in the Department of Education, Department of Labor, and others who are really the people that we rely on for services and in some cases financial support. But in having done some of these before, we found that Maricopa has a reputation for providing those entities with as much knowledge and information as we get from them. So it's a good use of our time. We hope that the snow is gone by the time we get there, because I no longer own boots, nor do I want to. So I look forward to the trip.
The establishment of the next meeting dates. Please note that on February 2nd, the work session is at 6 p.m. That's different than what had been earlier released. It's a correction in time. Also, agenda review is at 7 p.m. Please note that that time has been changed as well. On February 23rd, the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and on February at 5 p.m. And on February 23rd at 6:30 p.m. is the next regular board meeting here in the governing board room. If there are no further items before us, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all very much.